Hello, everybody. Thank you, Alex, for that
Welcome.
wonderful introduction. So, this afternoon, I want to talk to you about where SEO meets influencer marketing, and I want to leave you with perhaps a consideration as to how you, each and every one of you, might spend your next 10 years with the work that you do, whether it's with the businesses that you're part of, the businesses that you own, or in the free time that you have. And with that in mind, I want you to consider this expression: know my name. Know my name. So, my name, of course, is Deepak Shukla. And could you all please raise your hand if you've at least once looked at the speakers who are part of the agenda today? So you've all looked at the speaker list pretty much. Brilliant, brilliant. So with that in mind, I want to ask you now a second question. The second question is, did any of you look at the speakers, for example, history, whether it was on LinkedIn, or whether you looked at their Twitter bio, or read the bios that are, of course, on the website? How many? So maybe about 70% of the original list of people who looked at the agenda. Brilliant. So, I was looking at our lovely founder's profile, the founder of Digital Olympus, Alexandra. Can anyone tell me in the audience where she was working before she founded Digital Olympus? Okay, so we've got one person who said SEMrush. Who else knew, put your hands up, that she worked at SEMrush? Okay, brilliant. Okay, so keep your hands up if you knew that she worked at SEMrush. Okay, so now we've got about maybe 30% of the audience. Keep your hands up if you know where she worked before she was at SEMrush. Okay, so just me, which makes sense because I'm bloody asking you, right? So she worked for, I think it's called Niam, it's a software company, right? This is what she was doing before Digital Olympus, before SEMrush. She was at a software company. And it's really interesting, isn't it, when you think about that journey that we've all just gone on. That journey of exploring and understanding someone's working history. Throughout all of that, there's this, of course, as with SEO, as with the influencer marketers that we look at, as with how we spend our own time, there's this continual state of change. What is the constant? Everything is changing. There's a new algorithm, Deepak. There's a new way of indexing. There's a new link building strategy I'd like to show you. There's this new process of doing content. The constant, of course, through Alexandra's history, through your own history and probably your future, is change. So where then lies true influence when we think about how is it that we can progress, again, our own lives, whether it's within the businesses that we're part of, whether it's with the links that we're trying to build for the businesses that we're part of, whether it's for personal pet projects. It's in their name, right? What, through Alexandra's history, her own domain, Digital Olympus, SEMrush, Naeem, there's probably more that isn't even on her LinkedIn profile. What is, of course, the one consistent factor? Of course, it's her name, right? It's the one thing that we tend to remember, because everything else just costs us mental calories. So, I I don't quite remember. But you always do remember when you think about the businesses that you look at, the influencers that you look at, you tend to remember people's names. And what I want to do to demonstrate what this means in terms of how you should spend your time with the strategies that we've heard of today, right? Whether it's been through, the kind of search queries in SERP that Gianluca spoke about, whether it's through some of the growth hacks that Milos spoke of, whether it's through the content ideas that we've heard, through all of the kind of ideas that we've heard today, the bigger question at play that sits above that strategy or above those strategies is, okay, I've got 10 clients in front of me, or I've got 10 websites in front of me, I've got 10 hours in front of me. How is it that we spend our time? And I want to show you a couple of examples that hopefully illustrate the mistake, I think, if I'm being honest, that I made hugely over my last 10 years. I'm 32. I've been doing marketing in some form for the last decade. I would imagine that more than 70% of you had no clue who I was until I started doing this awkward moderation. So, I'm almost certain that everybody knows this guy. What I want to share with you, of course, for those who don't know Gary Vaynerchuk very quickly, he's a massive personal brand, of course. He's also the owner of Vaynerchuk Media. They've got several hundred employees. They have billings that are incredible. But what's interesting about Gary Vaynerchuk's journey is, of course, what he's done with his own name and where he started. Because he started in the wine space. He began back in 2006 on YouTube, recording videos of himself trying wine and spitting it in a bucket, right? He took his father's company from $3 million in annual revenue to around $50 to $60 million, I believe. That is the kind of inn that he hang a lot of his reputation on. And how is it that he got himself to those incredible numbers? What is it that he did? Look up Wine Library on YouTube. There's 1,000+ videos of Gary Vaynerchuk trying, tasting, sipping, and spitting out wine. He's then gone on to build innumerable books. He has, of course, a media company. The number one client or thing that Gary Vaynerchuk does with his own time in building anything is building his own brand name. Because that's been the one consistent thing that's never changed through the course of all of the things that he's done. Some of you might recognize this man, some of you might not. Do any of you know what company this man manages?
AppSumo.
Brilliant. Put your hand up if you've not heard of AppSumo. Okay, so practically everyone's heard of AppSumo. Fantastic. So what was really interesting about Noah Kagan's journey, unlike Gary Vaynerchuk, is that Noah Kagan never set out to actually build a personal brand as a way of building his business. What Gary Vaynerchuk has done has been quite intentional. And one could argue, or arguably say, Deepak, is there any kind of more data that defines, what at the moment is an insight that you have? Now, I'll share with you a couple of links to podcasts that Noah Kagan has been featured on, various podcasts about growth hacking. And he speaks about the early days of AppSumo before it became an 8-figure company, right? The software industry's version of Groupon. And he said that he found it to be a very interesting thing that when they were in the space of trying to build brand recognition and AppSumo were trying to achieve hockey stick growth, they very quickly discovered that they would get 3 or sometimes 4 to 1 return on ad spend whenever they built something on the basis, an ad set, group, individual ad on his name as opposed to AppSumo. So what they did when they discovered that that was what the data point was demonstrating was that they quickly pivoted and poured a lot of their marketing spend onto building his name. You might see it now with his website, OK Dork. You might see it now on their YouTube channel. If you look at kind of Noah Kagan's growth in parallel with AppSumo and how as soon as they discovered that data point, they decided that they would spend their marketing dollars, their hours, their choice of where they chose to build their links into this interesting space. This one's a bit of a controversial figure. Who of you have heard of Tai Lopez? Let me reverse it. Who of you have not heard of Tai Lopez? Put your hand up if you've not heard of Tai Lopez. Okay, brilliant. So, Tai Lopez, he is a self-proclaimed internet marketer. He is the owner of probably courses. His first most famous one was an SMM, a social media management course, but he became an internet celebrity, if you will, vis-a-vis a very infamous YouTube ad, which he spent hundreds of thousands or potentially millions on, where he speaks or imparts advice about the importance of reading. He infamously read a book of a day, but he's in his garage and he's got his Lamborghini in the background. The controversy revolves around, is it really your Lamborghini? Did you lease it? Did you rent it? And he's gone on now to be reputedly worth $50 million, so he says. And again, what he speaks about, if you listen to his interviews, he's a founder of a company that you might have heard of, MentorBox. You might see some of their adverts on YouTube where they offer $7 a month subscription to get their MentorBox program. Has anyone heard of MentorBox or seen it? Okay, no problem. So his entire, basically, empire of separate businesses, really interestingly, has been built around, really, in many respects, this one YouTube ad that he ran, which has caused lots of controversy. You can type in Tai Lopez scam, you can type in Tai Lopez. There's lots of interesting articles about him, but there's no debate as to has this strategy worked or not worked for him. The next one. This name, I imagine, would be quite familiar to everybody in the audience. Who has not heard of Larry Kim? Okay, so Larry Kim, founder of WordStream. I think they sold a couple of years back for around 130 million, I believe. It's a pretty incredible number in the marketing space in general. And again, on one of the, probably several publications that I've read about him discussing their story, was that in the earlier days of WordStream, when he decided to build a software company, a little bit like Noah Kagan, they discovered that where they saw most return on investment, not just on ad spend, right? Investment was by building Larry Kim's actual name and positioning himself in the media forefront. And that had an amazing return for the growth of WordStream from a reputational, from a branding perspective, okay? And what we begin to see is, of course, this very interesting parallel of this putting in place your name as your own brand. And this, well, it predates marketing, doesn't it? Hollywood. Anyone? Right? Influencer marketing as a space is, of course, huge in general. And what we do, as has been so aptly described earlier with the Brand 24 mentions, is that when we're engaging in influencer outreach, it's something that is considered to be a core component, right? Trying, for example, to achieve whatever link placement, whatever, paid post, whatever it might be, vis-a-vis the leverage of an audience that an influencer has. So we go back to this question of what is the action point in and amongst all of these strategies that you've learned today, that you're going to continue to learn, that could potentially decide or determine where you spend most of your valuable time. Whose name is it that you should build that in many ways will advance absolutely everything that you're part of, everything that you do? And I invite you to really do an audit of yourself and consider, how much time do I attribute tangibly to building my own website, my own links, my own blog? Milos, who you heard speak earlier, pointed out to me the failing of mine that I described to you earlier when he said, "Oh, Deepak, you're the Mailshake guy, aren't you?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, I was looking at email marketing outreach software and I typed in Mailshake review. I found you. I found your review. I now use Mailshake because, like you, I think it's really useful software." And the thing that he did immediately after that was, well, then I just tried to look you up immediately to see if you had a blog. And I saw that you don't really. And his journey in wanting to lead down his exploration of my journey got stunted because I've not spent enough time building that aspect of my brand. And that's where the fifth example, because we've had four, we've had Gary Vaynerchuk, we've had Noah Kagan, we've had Ty Lopez, we've had Larry Kim. That's where the fifth example comes into play when we think about our time, our next 10 years. What is it that we do with it? How is it that we apply these strategies in a way that's going to only lead to a net gain for all of the things that we're part of, all of the things that we work on? It's this, isn't it? This is the one thing that I would love for you to take, certainly from me today, maybe indeed from the whole day if you so wish it. It's the biggest thing that will open whatever door that you choose to walk down. It's when people know your name. When people know your name. And from an anecdotal perspective, I can tell you that the biggest expenditure since I discovered this massive mistake that I felt I was making within my own company, Pearl Lemon, the biggest expenditure in terms of clients now that we have is Pearl Lemon and Deepak Shukla. We spend most of our marketing dollars building the brand's reputation and name, both mine and the company, because that's what we're seeing is actually generating the most return for everything else that we do. And what I would love for you to think about as you move forward with the strategies that you've made notes of, with the new systems that you've been exposed to, is to really recognize that you're your number one client. Because I can't speak for your journeys. I don't know where your path is going to take you down after today. But I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, there's just really one consistent thing that's not going to change. It's you. And it's you, right? And if you're not spending marketing dollars, if you're not spending time and assets aggressively building your own reputation, it's going to put a limit on the doors that can open to you with the path that you're on. So, thank you, everybody.